In 1787, racial segregation in America was commonplace, even in church. One Sunday in Philadelphia, African American church members praying outside their designated area were pulled from their knees and forced to move. They later formed the Free African Society. In 1816, led by Richard Allen, a part of the society became the African Methodist Episcopal Church.
The African Methodist Episcopal Church is a social and service-oriented spiritual community. According to journalist Michael Barga, in about 100 years of development, the new community became what W.E.B. Du Bois considered a social center of astonishing efficiency, where the poor and ostracized met in human sympathy, mutual charity, and encouragement to fight the battle of life. The A.M.E. Church evolved out of the Free African Society at the end of the 18th century in Philadelphia. The first religious gathering was documented about 9 years before the church's official organization was set up in 1794. While oppression was less severe for free blacks in the Philadelphia area, the strong discrimination by white Methodists served as the catalyst for the new congregation, with Richard Allen as pastor. Richard Allen was born a slave in 1760 and died as the first bishop of the A.M.E. Church in 1831. He and his family are buried in a tomb at the lower level of the Mother Bethel A.M.E. Church in Philadelphia. Abolitionist efforts during this period were prominent at Bethel. Members of Bethel collected signatures for abolition and placed a strong emphasis on voting rights. During its first decades of struggle, aside from political abolitionist activities, the church also welcomed black travelers and runaway slaves in Philadelphia. The legacy was spread as new A.M.E. churches were established, and many church buildings had secret basements or rooms used in the Underground Railroad. As a matter of fact, Allen stressed social uplift and social justice as the unifying and driving force of his church. Jurana Lee was likely one of the first African American female preachers in America. She was a free black widow from New Jersey, hoping to expand the role of women in the new church. When she asked permission to preach, Allen didn't say yes, but he did allow her to hold prayer meetings in her house. She finally became ordained in 1885. Ultimately, female ordination would begin in the A.M.E. Church by the mid-20th century, highlighted by Vashti Murphy McKenzie becoming the first female A.M.E. bishop in 2000. Richard Allen died in 1831, but the church continued to spread. By 1846, there were 298 churches in 6 A.M.E. church districts located throughout 14 states. The dark reality of slavery continued to deter A.M.E. missionaries from the South, and by the 1850s, the A.M.E. Church created a committee on slavery to foster abolitionist ideas. The A.M.E. Church's rugged commitment to education blossomed in the post-Civil War era, especially in the development of higher institutions. Wilberforce was rebuilt. The Kansas Annual Conference of the A.M.E. Church established Western University. Plus, there was the founding of Paul Quinn College in Texas, Allen University in South Carolina, and Morris Brown University in Georgia. By the end of the Civil War in 1865, A.M.E. pastors would follow Northern troops, sometimes serving as chaplains, and immediately began to set up communities among former slaves. Between 1856 and 1876, A.M.E. churches more than doubled to 200,000. The A.M.E. Church included voices of protest during the Civil Rights Movement against the troubling violence from Reconstruction to segregation. And in 1894, Frederick Douglass gave his last great speech, The Lesson of the Hour, at Metropolitan A.M.E. Church in Washington, D.C., on the injustice of lynching. Another developing stream of thought in the AME Church that has continued is the need to help the Black urban poor. And today, the AME Church continues to be an advocate for voting rights for minorities and the disadvantaged. In the 21st century, there are AME church communities in 39 countries on 5 continents, led by 21 active bishops and 9 general officers. The total membership of the AME Church stands at nearly 2.5 million. As the AME Church continues its mission of seeking out the oppressed and those in need, they are spreading the gospel of liberation along with the spirit of social justice, so that the AME motto can stand strong. God our Father, Christ our Redeemer, the Holy Spirit our Comforter, humankind our family.